Hello and welcome to the 7th edition of the Consumer Freedom Conclave. I am Rini Simon Khanna, and together with the country's largest media conglomerate, the Times Group, I'm happy to host this episode with the intent of not limiting consumer choices, but protecting the customer in a largely digital era of merchandising. To talk about these and much more, and to throw some light on the many unknown aspects that surround tobacco use or other addictive uses, let me now move to our eminent panelists. Maybe it's best to begin with a doctor and understand the perspective of the medical community. So I'd like to begin with Dr. Bharat Gopal, Senior Director of Pulmonology at the Delhi Lung and Heart Institute. Doctor, NCDs are now a massive burden on the healthcare segment. Estimates suggest that India could lose between 4.58 trillion US dollars and 6.2 trillion US dollars before 2030 because of non-communicable diseases. It therefore poses as a massive threat to the already burdened healthcare system of our country. How do you view this?
Most of the time, the people who come to us are people who have developed some symptom because of that addiction to, mainly in my specialty, tobacco. Right? Being a pulmonologist, most of the people who come to me would be actually using smoked tobacco, right? Not the smokeless variety, even if that is equally harmful. So we will just put everything together and probably think over what we can actually do. So as you said, the non-communicable diseases, as the medical technologies and the treatments become advanced, we are more or less trying to take over the infections and all those things and able to treat them better and treat them well. So what has moved is the non-communicable diseases because of the lifestyles which we are following, the level of stress which is there, and all that is actually percolating into substance abuse.
If I could just interrupt you here. I mean, by the time the patient comes to you, it's probably a little late already because it's not the starting stage of the addiction, that he's or she is suffering from. So does that make it even more difficult for you?
It's not only makes it difficult, but the probably we have to begin somewhere. So unfortunately, we do not have a system of preventive health in India. Howsoever fashionable it may be, if you look at the masses, the preventive health is not a concept. It may be a good concept when we sit in tertiary care hospitals and we have a educated class coming to us, but when we are talking about smoking, we are talking about millions out of those billions.
Correct.
Right? So as you said that there are people who want to quit, there are people who try quitting, but unfortunately most of the people fail. Now the reason is that we do not have a defined way where a person who wants to quit, he should go. The government is trying and having control programs, government is trying and having quit lines, right? But I still feel the awareness among general public on where to seek help is still lacking.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gopal. Now that we understand a doctor's perspective, it's important to understand how best we can enable consumers to make an informed decision with effective policy making and regulations rather than restricting a consumer's freedom of choice. We've got with us partner at the J. Sagar Associates, Mr. Upendranath Sharma, and I'd like to turn to you, sir. In an effort to curb addiction of any form, be it alcohol, be it tobacco, or what is considered gambling, the government has imposed high taxes and bans over the years. These bans have been highly ineffective. Similarly, in the case of tobacco, the increase in tax by the government has not seen any decline in the consumption over the years. And in the last 2 decades, taxes on tobacco have actually increased manifold, but the consumption of tobacco in the country has not had any decline. How realistic is banning or increase in taxation a solution to control addiction, and are there any alternative measures rather than imposing a complete, ban on this?
Thanks, Rini. Any ban, specifically the hurriedly imposed bans, which happened in many of the industries in India, are always counterproductive. It does not result into any fruitful outcome. The consequences, it leads to a thriving, frivolous, and surviving gray market, which the consequences, the products are easily available. For example, e-cigarettes, now they are technically not allowed, but because the grey market is thriving, they're easily available without any checks and balances in terms of quality, quantity, the packaging, which internationally countries have always prescribed wherever it is allowed. So it kind of, completely takes away the merit of banning. And similarly, in the case of liquor, as you also mentioned initially, in case of one of the Bihar
the liquor
case,
tragedy.
liquor tragedy, there the High Court has said that it's not been properly implemented and it has had various side effects. So it's a given that all these bans do not give any benefit, and increasing tax also is not really the best thing, because again there will be a grey market and people will still go and buy it from the grey market, and some people who can afford will pay extra, but they will still go for it. It will not be a de-addiction.
So
Now,
what are the alternate measures?
alternative measures are that the government should engage, have a policy framework, engage with the right stakeholders, have an open debate, discussions, look at scientific data, how it has been done the world over in various countries, what has been the feedback, see the complete life cycle. Say in the US, somebody who was addicted to smoking and used alternate measures, what has been his journey through life. So take examples from that, come up with a well thought of legislation with everyone's inputs, put it out for debate, and then formulate a policy and regulate. I'm not saying ban it or do anything completely in the negative, just regulate.
Right, thank you so much, Mr. Sharma. Well, we've also got with us Professor Bejon Kumar Mishra, the international consumer policy expert and an honorary professor at the National Law University in Odisha. I'd like to ask you, Professor Mishra, what do today's consumers care about, the most? Is it product variety? Is it safety? Is it quality? Or is it price?
Rini, the most important aspect which every consumer looks for is no compromise on safety. It's non-negotiable. You cannot sell any product which is unsafe. And that's the responsibility of the regulatory body or the laws to ensure that you get a product which is safe and would never harm you. That's the first thing. The second is, you see, the consumer always looks for value for money. I pay something, I must get back that value which has been promised to me, and I must be able to take a decision based on a very transparent mechanism where you will tell me the actual value in a credible manner in a language which I understand, not in a language which you want to push me with. कई लोग कोशिश करते हैं that they talk huge technical jargons and we get completely confused.
Yeah.
I want a simple language, from you, that ये product हमको क्या देगा if I purchase it? What is it going to give me? Now, who is saying that is also very important. Is it credible? Is it scientifically tenable? Does it have evidences to prove? And because the legislations are there, laws are there, standards are there, so consumers always look for standard. मानक है कि नहीं? क्या मानक मानते हैं वो? What is the law says? So consumers look for that. And of course, as I said, value for money means what? That you should be able to decide that हमारे पास choice होनी चाहिए, विकल्प जिसको हम लोग कहते हैं. I can't buy for 10 rupees this product, but can I get the same product for 1 rupee? So I look for it. So there has to be choice. There has to be an opportunity for the consumer to decide on their own.
We'd like to hear what the government's point of view is, in controlling the fundamental cause of the non-communicable diseases that we've been talking about, tobacco. Will India meet this target? That's my first question. And how do we ensure that our policies are evidence-based, research-based, and are backed by case studies that show success in the past?
As we are progressing with India at the time of independence, we were struggling with the communicable disease. As we have progressed further, so we had another issue, that is maternal and child, that we had programs focusing exclusively on communicable disease and the maternal and child health. And after 90s and other thing, when the dependent, the working population increases, the migration also increases, the urbanization also increases. As a result, you are now facing a challenge of triple burden of disease. Communicable disease, maternal child care, and the non-communicable disease. Among the non-communicable disease, the major challenge is the hypertension and the diabetes. These are two things, because the moment you migrate, as your lifestyle changes from deprivation to affluence, the moment you are changing, these are the two diseases which you would be having. That means you would be having diabetes, hypertension, the people would be, you would be coming across people, because as a result of affluence, you would be having these two things. That means currently we are struggling with these three problems.
The burden is high.
The second thing, I'm just giving this background. Second thing is we have moved from disease. We have been talking about disease. From disease, we have, whole of the world, they have agreed that this is health. They have come up with, it took around 40 years after the formation of WHO to arrive at a consensus on definition of health. Having said that, they, whole of the world committee, when we talk about the next question or the last segment, when we talk about the multi-sectoral involvement, WHO also, along with other countries, we have agreed for health for all. Some targets were set. After that, the Millennium Development Goals were there. Then now we are having the Sustainable Development Goals. The target set for reduction of the premature mortality. Why we talk about premature mortality, we should understand that the person who can live, suppose somebody is born today, he, as per the life expectancy, he need to have a good life till 70 years of age.
Correct.
But if he dies early, that is premature. That means we are just obstructing his journey of life. That he could have lived 70 years, 80 years, but because of certain non-communicable disease, he could not live to that extent. That premature mortality has to be reduced by 1/3.
I'd like to now move on to Dr. Bharat Gopal. Dr. Gopal, what are your views on safer alternatives? You've given us a lot of information when I last spoke to you about it. Do you really believe that they can help in controlling the smoking addiction? Or do you think, as I mentioned earlier, it results in another addiction that we are going to be tackling?
So whenever I come to such debates, you have to take it in the right perspective. What I see are people who are now having, as Dr. Gopal was saying, that we are moving from disease to wellness, wellness to well-being. Now they have a disease, they are not well, obviously they have nothing like a well-being concept. Now they come to us. So I am not a primary care practitioner, I am not a preventive health specialist. So they will come to us with a disease, primarily smoking related lung disease or COPD. We know that there is enough evidence that if they keep smoking, the disease will keep progressing.
Yes.
Once they quit smoking, the body actually starts to recuperate, and the risks of smoking related cardiac and respiratory diseases and cancers will keep actually going down with every passing day after he has quit. It may take time, but so if a 28-year-old is coming to me, then obviously he has a whole life ahead, as he said, 70 years, so that's 40 years left. I would rather want him that in next 10 years, he comes down to the same risk as of the community.
So let me just turn to you, Upendra Sharmaji. Can the availability of these alternatives that we were all talking about and safer products be of help when it comes to controlling that grey market that you referred to? Right. These markets are often very lucrative for people. I mean, apart from the fact that it is a product that's not easily available, but it's also a product that you're buying at a premium. How do you also ensure that the quality that you get is not counterfeit, is not fake, and then becomes injurious further to your health.
Just to add to what Dr. Gopal mentioned, have a statutory, sandbox approach. That is that, there's a sandbox which is basically a limited area where are no regulations applicable.
Correct.
And you have your subjects there, experiment it, come out with some analysis and then develop it, basis the results of that. So that's a scientific approach.
Correct.
See how it's been done the world over and the progressing economies. And of course, there are very great countries which are far ahead of us, and they are using it. See their experiences, then come up with this regulated legislation. Now, the legislation itself, will provide, say, the quantity to be used, the manner of prescription, how to use it, and who can use it. It can't be that any small kid can go and take it. There has to be, like, even for liquor stores right now, you have that some
Below a
places
certain age, you are
21,
not allowed,
25, you can't do that. So similarly, have the regulations.
Professor Mishra, you've been listening to both of them talk about the safer alternative products, and also you've been advocating that the consumer should be equipped with information, with the safety regulations that are involved. How do you assess this entire scenario? What are the leading challenges that a consumer faces today when it comes to substance abuse? And do you think that these regulations and policies that Mr. Sharma was referring to would actually help consumers in making that final choice?
You see, Rini, like earlier I said, you bring in regulations to develop certain standards. So you know fundamentally that this is what we have to follow because this is a mandatory law, and the lawmakers have sat down, deliberated, and passed a legislation. But when you pass a legislation, you also have to understand that when you go to implement it, you have to understand the psyche of the people or the citizens for whom you have made. Which means what? That you have to show compassion to people. See, आज लोगों को ये महसूस करवाना होगा कि we are concerned about you. You are getting addicted. So you need a good counseling kind of a mechanism in the country, which is missing today in our country.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Mishra. Dr. Gopal, I come back to you. We've all now kind of agreed that banning and prohibition is not really the solution. How are we going to change this scenario? Why can't the government think of regulation as being a more say, a better way of dealing with the scenario?
Despite ban, whether you ban it or not, the things are available in the grey market. So they are having a devastating effect on the economy. I don't know how these grey products and other things. We all talk about, take pride that we are Indians, we will make Indian products.
Correct.
But we all are very much bogged down to consuming the illicit and other products. That's the paradox which we are having in the society and the value system which we are having in the society. That's one thing. First, create consumers, make them addict with deceptive advertisements. Despite having bans on the advertisements about the tobacco and the other liquor products, they have found a way of decepting the population.
Yes.
Yes.
Big celebrities, I stopped watching them because they are addicting. After this substance abuse, they are addicting them to gambling. I don't know what kind of way we are going.
Correct.
These kind of things, we are creating consumers.
Correct.
We are creating future consumers.
Yes.
If you talk about a pan wala, go and ask a bidi patta, he will give you free. The child will get a bidi patta free of cost because they are future consumers.
I'd like to now turn our attention to our audience members who are here and give them an opportunity to ask compelling questions of our panelists. So the floor is open to you. Just raise your hand and the microphone will come to you.
At present, the rate of quitting smoking and gaming is low in the country. What are the reasons behind such a low rate of quitting?
Because the tobacco and its related derivatives, it is causing more harm than the benefits. We have been always claiming about the demographic dividend. We are having a good working population and the dependency ratio is not going to change till 2040. But are we happy with the body mass index of the people of the working population? That's the question we need to ask. Then you have to see that how we make it is a movement. Unless and until it becomes a mass movement, that means we have to quit tobacco or tobacco related products, because it is increasing the healing time. If you talk to any surgeon or orthopedician, it is increasing the healing time. It is causing other problems also. If you look at the spur in the number of the infertility clinics, do you want that kind of thing to happen? Because many of the couples and others, if they are chewing tobaccos, the women, they are having miscarriage during their first trimester, and the other people, if you talk about them, you see what kind of things is happening.
Do you think alternative products are safer as they are addictive as well, especially in the case of gaming and investments made in contingencies?
Having a sort of a diet XYZ doesn't mean that you are actually probably drinking something which is going to be healthy. It is just that it is probably, they said it was less harmful, and now it has come that even because it was being portrayed and WHO had to step in, that don't think that that is harmless.
Correct.
People used to think that 0-calorie drink means you can have 10 of those drinks and that's it, no problem. And I'm talking about soft drinks.
Yeah.
We are not even touching things like alcohol. And smoking. So I think that would probably clear it out, that please, for your young generation like you have to understand, when you go out for a party, if you are thinking that shisha is safe, it is not.
Yeah.
That could be your first step into addiction towards other things.
What steps can policymakers take in enabling safer alternatives from an investment outcome perspective?
So, investment versus outcome, that's a very interesting point. The whole thing is that the government needs to change its approach as such. Right now, the focus is on harm caused by tobacco. Let's move away from that and see what are the alternate products available. Focus on them. In fact, as encouragement specifically to the startups, they should say that, okay, you will get some tax holiday, come up with a good product with technology, which is proven and has a good tax, a good health implication. So maybe a tax rebate or incentives or grants. Guys, do this and this is how it will benefit you. So these are the schemes which the incentives can be provided by the government, and you will see the outcomes would be really great, fruitful there.
It is crucial to ensure that there is enough access to effective and affordable smoking cessation resources, and this includes NRTs and safer alternatives to help with quitting. Thank you very much, esteemed speakers, and of course our audience for a very engaging discussion. That's all in this edition of Consumer Freedom by ETH.